Hello, subscribers. Hello, others. It's David Hoffman, filmmaker, proud to share an interview I conducted last week with Louise. Louise is an ordinary woman, just a plain person who's had a pretty hard time in life from the start, got treated terribly, probably like a lot of women who are watching this video. Louise, in spite of it, feels love in her heart, cares about her children, cares about society, and wrote me and said, I'd like to tell my story. And I said, Louise, I'd like to help you tell that story. She's doing it first because she has to exercise it from herself. She has to get that story out of her security and privacy. 2, she hopes it helps other people in the world, and I think it will. And 3, she wrote a book and printed it herself of her story. Louise is a heroic to me and touching woman who just crap happened to her, and I don't like that. So I'm sharing this interview with Louise with the hope that it'll help you and that you'll feel something. Maybe some of you will want to buy her book. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, viewers. Sit back in your own seat, in your own mind, and just tell me your story.
Okay, well, when I was a child, well, I was in abusive, dysfunctional family, okay? And I remember when I was 8 years old already, I was thinking about getting 18 to be able to leave the house. And when I left the house, I was very unsure of myself, and I was scared of the world, and I didn't have a great opinion of myself because of the abuse, right? Because when you get abused, you believe when years go by, and then you believe that. And so when I left at 18 to escape that violence, mind me, I love my parents, okay, and it's not their fault. They didn't know better that time.
Do you really believe that?
I really do, because they did what they could with what they had. Because my dad, he didn't grow up himself in a good environment, and neither my mom. So, and they were really poor. They were trying to do their best, really. And
Then why would they be abusive? I mean, love and
well,
abuse don't go together.
I believe it's because they didn't love each other to begin with. I don't think they were meant to be together. And they tried to do with what they had. And we have to think that back then, in the 50s, 60s, it's not the same as today. Like people were more religious, and um, they were not that educated either, okay, about the world, and about, there was no TV back then. I remember my dad didn't have a TV, and they were poor, so living themselves in a poor environment themselves, so they were taught that way, and they thought that's the way you raise kids, and that's how we've been raised because of the ignorance. And
Well, what did you mean by abuse then? And why did you leave?
well, the abuse was physical abuse and mental abuse, emotional abuse, calling names and being beaten, and I had a lot of beating. But and I left because of that, because always been in this scary situation, and in the house was always my dad, my mom fighting all the time. And when you are children, and you kind of like a sponge, right? So you take in all of the negativity. So it stays with you, and you live in fear, so it builds you truly. And so I think that my parents didn't know better. They really didn't, and I can't hold them a grudge for that. But at 18, then I wanted to leave because I couldn't anymore. And the 4 of us left. I have 3 other siblings. And then when I left, you see, I was scared of everything in the world, right? So when I came into the world, by myself with no knowledge of anything and no knowledge about man and all that. I got myself into a bad relationship right away. And I, I think that being unsure of myself and being scared and not having a great opinion of myself, I think I think at somewhere I didn't believe I could deserve better. And the other reason is that the fact to be scared and do it on my own in the world, the first man that light an eye on me, I kind of hold on and here I'm with that guy, and I think that's what happened with the man.
Were you in love with that guy? Did you experience love with him?
I think it was an emotional attachment that I thought that was love. Okay. And after a while, I was 7 years and a half with him. And I think that love, they say that you love your abuser, right? You fall in love with your abuser. And I think that's what happened because of the fear again, because I was abused like even worse than when I was at home. Like it was like sexually abusing me and mentally and physically and with guns. And it was terrifying time for me. And I couldn't leave because of that fear. But when I got my kids, that was the most beautiful thing that happened to me at that time, right? So I hung on to them, and but after a while, when I look at them grow, they were about 2 years old almost. And then I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to let my kids grow in that kind of environment? And so I started to try to find a way to get out of that situation. And I tried a couple times, but they always got me back and with threats. And it was a scary time. I'm not going to go into details about things, but it's it's abuse that you only see in movies. Like it's really terrible things. And so I always came back because of fear, right? So, but one day, it's funny because I was praying to God, please get me out of here somehow. And one day he brought someone at home and he said, because he was an alcoholic and drug addict, the father of my kid, okay? And so he brought this guy so that I don't know why he did that, but he left him home for 2 days and he spoke to me about God. And I thought, oh my gosh, I saw an opening, right? So um, his name was Mark, okay? He came back home as a friend of the family after a while and he saw the abuse, okay? So on the side, a few months went on, and on the side he said, okay, I can help you get a better life to get out of here. And then I thought, okay, that's my chance. They did help me, and we ran away to another city. It was about 5 hours drive away from there. And then there, Mark, he introduced me to his family, and they were really welcoming. And I thought, oh my gosh, finally I'm going to have a good life and stuff.
Why did you break the tradition of your family? And why were your parents unable to break the tradition? What did you do that they didn't do?
Well, I'm going to say something really sad here, maybe, but I hope it's not true, okay? But for me, I fell in love with my kids. And I think that's what it was. And I think that my parents, they were just surviving, right? And I don't think they really loved us. I don't say they don't because I'm not in their heart, but I have a doubt about it because when you love someone, how can you treat them that way, right? So for me, when I had my children, it's the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me. It's my children, and the love I have for them. There's nothing to compare here. Uh, you know, so that's why I didn't want them to go through what I've been through. So yeah,
So you don't hate him?
no, I don't. You know, hatred. I could have a reason to hate, okay, for sure, and people would say, yeah, and they would justify me for that. But the thing is that I'm the only one who's carrying my own heart, okay? And I don't want hate in my heart. I want love in my heart. Okay, so that's the reason why I refuse to hate. And the best way to heal from the hurt is not by hating people, it's by forgiving them. And when you forgive, you give this a gift to yourself, because it's the first step to healing, forgiveness. So
When you went through this and up until the time you met the priest, and that time, were you a practicing on? You a practicing Catholic person? Did you practice the religion, the faith, and is that what brought you to the priest?
okay, we were going to church as children, right? Like my mom, they taught us about the religion, and we went to church on Sundays and stuff. But I never had a real understanding of it, really, as a child. But when I was in my 20s, and my relationship with God really got closer because of my sufferings with the father of the kids, right? But I didn't go to church at that for years. On when I met Mark, that helped me. He was really religious, and he brought me to church, and then I started to go to church then. And then when Marky was sick, okay, with HIV, and when he did develop to AIDS, we had moved to the big city where I met that priest in the church. Okay, and that's how I fell in love with the man. The first time I saw him, it's weird, I can't explain it, okay? But I felt a strong connection when I saw him, and there was a wave of love that just came into my heart, and I just couldn't understand it. And I felt really bad because that happened in the church, and Mark was sitting right beside me.
You fell in love with him, but did he fall in love with you, or did you provoke that feeling in him? What had to go both ways?
At that very moment, I don't know what happened to him, but I know what happened to me. And of course, I was very curious about that. And I tried to know more about if he did have the same feeling, of course, to be honest with you. I couldn't sit there and have that huge love in my heart and just don't know what to do with it without knowing, if it goes on both ways. So, of course, I went to the confessional box and tried to, try to see him from closer and see if that connection was by talking to him. And he was really, really kind, and I never did anything at that point. Excuse me. At that point, like I could say, like, oh, he tried to on his side because it was too early at that point. But yes, I did talk to him. I wanted to have that connection to say, okay, hello, because we didn't know each other, right? So at that point, yeah, I wanted to know him. I wanted to know his name. If you have that feeling of love, you don't even know the name of the person, right? I was really curious about that, to know his name.
You did not see it as a sin.
No, no, no. Me, it's sin. It's when you do something bad intentionally to someone else. Okay, that's a sin. Okay, but this religious thinking about, sorry to say, okay, but Catholic is really over the top with the sin business here. Everything is a sin, okay? And for me, like I said earlier, I'm not that religious, I'm more spiritual. And for me, God is love, okay? And yes, when I sin and I do bad, I feel it in my heart, and I would ask God for forgiveness. But going out of curiosity to talk to a man, it's not because he wears a Roman collar that it's a sin, to fall in. I never understood this story of why priests can't get married. Never understood it.
Well, what happened in that love affair between you? You need to describe it. Otherwise, it's just, I don't know. I got to know what you're talking about.
He helped me find a place to stay. He helped me put the children in school, and he was so supportive. And through this episode, then, the relationship grew, got stronger, and I could feel, and we had, he was my spiritual advisor, so we had those sessions in his office. And he told me things. He never told me flat out, Louise, I'm in love with you. And, he never did. But I think because I believe he couldn't. But he gave me little hints, like once he asked me what I was thinking if a priest would go to another country to get married, for instance. Okay. So, he tells me this. And he knows, when two people truly love each other, you just know. There's no doubt about it. Okay. And the way we look at each other, we're gazing at each other at church, and always finding a reason to meet, uh, you know, to talk. He would wait for me at the end of the mass to give me a little prayer or something, a book to read, or, so, but you see, at that point, he never told me, like I said, because I think he couldn't, okay? I couldn't tell him because I was too nervous, because I couldn't believe that a man like him could be in love with me, because I still had that idea of myself that I didn't deserve great things in my life. So I kind of broke it myself between us because of that fear I had. And I think that he had fear also on his side because of the church. So our roads like separated, because when we came really, really close to be together, okay, and then they sent him away for a month, okay, and then I couldn't not be there, not seeing him, right, for a month. It was a lot for me. And when he came back, that something had happened with that. You could it would be long to explain, but something happened with my words I chose in English, and so he understood something in the wrong way, and I really wanted to explain it in the right way, and it's a letter I had sent him, right? And it's a funny one. It was the word mate and tame, because once when we were talking to each other in a meeting, um, he said that you need to be tamed, right? Because I was, not trusting, and I used that word in the envelope, that I trust you now, so you know, don't break that trust. But instead of writing tame, I switched two letters and I wrote mate on it, and then that one, like the whole letter went another direction. I laugh about it today because it's so funny. But back then I was so stressed out and I really want to explain. And on the envelope, because okay, in the letter I asked him that we need to meet somewhere, just you and I, away from the church, away from those people, right? And so he, on the letter, when I tried to explain the maid and Tammy, I said, I want my letter back. And he brought it back, but he wrote underneath of it, will not call, waiting to find a place. And that was like, wow. But I was so caught up onto my mistake of my word that I didn't read that little sentence underneath of. I just saw the big word mate. Okay. Grabbed the letter, went home, crying and crying. And then after I took the letter again, make sure, like, did I really write that? And I read it. And then that's when I noticed that little sentence of him. And then I got so excited. It says, oh, he wants to meet. And, I was excited. But when I saw him the next time, he said, Louise, we can't talk to each other anymore. And that was a shock. And I didn't understand, because the priest, in the meantime, they knew what was going on. And what didn't help the situation was one woman in the parish that she was supposedly to be my friend and helping me out. And I invited her and her husband. And we were sitting in the living room talking, and we were gazing again. And when he left, she says, oh my God, he's in love with you. And I didn't say a word, right? So, and then she came back home trying to, are you in love with him? Are you in love with him? And then I had to say it because I can't lie. And I just said, yeah, I am in love with him. oh, okay, it's okay to be in love with him, but don't go any further than that, though. And then she went and she told the priest's superior what was happening between us. And I think they had a doubt about it already, but that did really confirm everything. And she did a lot of bad things to me, that woman. Like, and until like one day she came home and again harassing me with that. And then I said, look, you were also in love with the priest, because she told me her story, and you even kissed him, and it's okay, right? But why isn't it okay with me? I love him and I want to be with him. Huh? She got so angry with me, and she never spoke to me then after. And then that's when she started to spread the word in the parish. And then I was all the words, Jezebel of the Bible. I was all the characters, bad characters. Okay, I was crazy, mentally disturbed. I've been called all the names. And then the people like started to change their attitude with me in the parish, and I started to get shunned. And then people would come to my house and say, you can't be in love with the priest. Or I would walk on the street and they say, I wish you go to hell. And all kinds of stuff, so much pressure. And the priest himself, his superior, would come to me after, take me in his office and threaten me in his office. And I would go home and I would cry. And all of that went on and on and on for years until like I got exhausted. And then I decided to move away because I
Did the
couldn't.
priest not help you during this time?
He was not allowed to talk to me no more. Like I went to see him, the confessional cornered him in the confessional and say, look, tell me if you don't love me at least so I can move on. I need to know. And he would just put his head down like this and tighten his jaws and hold it tight there, right? And looking down, and he wouldn't say a word to me at all about it. And after a while, I was just like, you know, okay, I have to go. So I left. And then again, I was scared to leave with my kids, and I went back home. And so my best friend, he
The
asked
poor
me,
priest, he must have suffered terribly in himself.
oh, okay, you know what? Like crying, I saw him crying. I can't like really want to go too much there, but to see him suffer like that, um, it just broke me. Okay, yes, I was suffering, and I had no support. They didn't offer me any support, and all I had to hold it myself and put a smile on my face when I would go to church. Okay, but one day I went to the confessional, and he was crying and I was crying. So I went to see him there, and then he said, Louise, we just need to pray for each other. That's the last things he said to me. And so I know he prays for me, but I saw him depressed. And you know, when you love someone and you can feel how much they do suffer, you know, um, I'm sorry. I just can't see him suffer. That's my suffering, I can't handle it, but I can't handle him suffer. And I know he did an awful lot. I think he must have been depressed.
In your opinion, just as a person who experienced what you have here, is the church wrong in in their view of this, or are you
Absolutely.
wrong?
Absolutely. They are wrong. I'm sorry. Me, okay, I'm not a priest. I'm not a nun. I'm a simple woman. And uh, falling in love with a man before being a priest is a man. Okay. And before, I think it's 1839, Pope Innocent II, that's when the priests were married in the Catholic Church before. Okay. So what's the problem then? All of a sudden, you know, that priest cannot be married. And why it was not wrong before and now it is wrong. I find that hypocritical. I'm sorry. There's so many things that doesn't add up with that religion. Okay. Uh, I don't think I'm wrong for being truly, genuinely in love with this man. Okay. And I believe, in fact, that they wronged me and they wronged him and they wronged all of the other women that are in love with priests, and they wronged all of the other priests and the children of those priests that have to hide. They wrong them. So I think that the Catholic Church is wrong, in fact, yes.
Do you think other people have had the same experience with priests as you?
Oh yeah, of course, because like I was part of the group. Okay, it's just, like because there's so many stories. There's books out there. You know, you can just go on Google and married woman in love with priests. Bunch of books gonna come out, and there's many stories. And that support group I was part of because I needed to get support from somewhere. It's all stories of women being in love with priests, and they're so it crushes your heart to hear some stories. Some of them, like even like there is this child, like even he died. There's a priest that committed suicide, and
Hmm.
uh, so many stories, so sad. So yes, I do believe that they are wrong, and they should fix this story of celibacy. It's outdated.
Well, I know because you contacted me that you actually wrote a book and you weren't a writer, a professional writer. So show me the book and then tell me, why did you write that book? That's a very bold thing to do, Louise.
Well, for me, I'm thinking like since they had put that law of silence upon the priest I'm in love with, uh, of course they did put the same law on me, obviously, because I couldn't speak and everything had to be. So for me, I got so sick and depressed after a while when I left from there. I was away from him and I couldn't cope emotionally and I was depressed and I even became suicidal. So I went for therapy. And the lady was so good there. She helped me out so much. Her name is Natalie. And she said, you should write what happened to you. It's a therapeutical way of getting out what's happening to you. And I did. And it was so helpful. And I just put my heart and my soul and every detail of what happened to me that I couldn't tell them, that you know, I couldn't scream the whole world what was happening. So it was a good way for me to be heard. And so then after, I didn't want to publish it, but she read it and she says, you should publish. And my children said, you should publish. And so I did. And that's my book here. If you want to look at it. It's called,
Wow, that is a real achievement in my view as a creative person for somebody like you to put out your story. It takes courage and it's hard to do.
I appreciate that's called Forbidden to Love. And it's pure hearts crushed under the law of celibacy.
How are your children?
The church didn't only hurt me, they did hurt my children. Because as much as I tried not to cry in front of them, as much as we're so close that they knew, you know, that I was suffering. And when they would do like terrible things to me, like kicking me out of the church or, you know, humiliating me in public during a dinner, I would go home crying, and the children were there. Oh, mama, you know what's happening. And they knew. And even my son, he was 13 years old one day, and he went into the confessional. He went to see my priest, and then he said to him, look, he said, if you don't love my mom, tell her, because she can, you know, move on. And if you do love her, tell her. And he was 13 years old. I thought he was so courageous. And then he came home, and my kids, they like me. I taught them never lie, always tell the truth. And he came home and says, Mom, I did something, don't get angry. I says, what did you do? And then he told me he went to the confessional time. And I said, oh my gosh, here we go again. So I'm going to get a bunch of, you know, repercussion from that. And
I admire him for speaking up for his mother. But you feel today, like today and tomorrow, hope, faith, good feelings. I'm very glad you did this story with me. I hope that people in the future benefit by you, but of course you're still alive and you're still functioning and you still look healthy. So
oh yeah, oh yeah. The thing is that it's just don't hold anything bad, negative from your experiences. Learn from it. Forgive, forgive people who are involved in it. Let go. Let go of things. Otherwise, it gets you sick emotionally. And just, you know, if something happens, in your life, and you don't know why it happens, you don't need to know why. You just need to know how to cope with it with peace, okay? And then for me, peace is it's a compass that I'm in the right track in my heart. So I do accordingly as long as the peace stays in my heart, as hard as the situation can be. And you need to give yourself the gift of forgiveness, okay? That's what I believe, that when you go through things like that, and believe in yourself, and don't let people judge the define who you are by that judgment. You are who you are, and you got to believe in you, and you've got to appreciate yourself for who you are. People, they let themselves, like I did for my whole life, being call names and put down, and you're nothing, and you're not worth anything, and I believed that for my whole life. And the moment I said no, no more, okay, I know who I am, and the people love me, close to me, they love me, they know who I am, and they appreciate me. And the other people who don't appreciate me or don't respect me, I just put like a healthy boundary. And that's what I did with the church. I left the church, and I'm very happy that I did it. And yeah, that's it. And then it's okay, I forgive them, but I moved on from that. Yeah. But I learned an awful lot. Yeah.
Yeah, you sure did. Hey, you're a courageous woman, very articulate. I hope that I have captured this little piece of your life in a good way. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for letting me sharing.